Good evening and welcome to the Psychic House Shop. Sitting down with me tonight is Jennifer Jules in from the garden, although it's a little cold in where I'm at. She's out in California. How are you, darling?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So how did you get started in all this?
You know, I was one of those lucky children that was raised by a mother who was an avid gardener, actually a professional gardener and floral designer, and a wildlife biologist father. And I grew up at 8,000 feet in the state of Colorado. And those things all together are kind of an interesting combination of a lot of habitat knowledge and science knowledge combined with very down home, on the ground in the dirt knowledge from my mother, as well as some really tough gardening conditions at 8,000 feet in Colorado.
Right.
And so they all came together to kind of become the alchemy of me not really having a choice. Like I was just going to be a gardener. That's kind of who I am at a cellular level, Aeson.
Mm-hmm. So with that, your books are not just take seed in February, plant it, pop it up, water it and till it throughout the year, and in August you might get tomatoes.
No, they aren't. They're about so much. They're kind of about that to some extent, or how people do just that. But I went along in life. I was always a gardener and I was always a writer. I was working as an editor for Microsoft's Encarta Encyclopedia in Seattle, Washington in the late 1990s. And I kept suggesting to the team that we add articles on all the major gardens of the world. And people were kind of like, I don't know, whatever, maybe, I don't know, let's stick with the presidents for now, right? And so I recognized that I wanted to write about gardening as well as be a gardener. And I started submitting articles and kind of, interesting observations to a local neighborhood kind of community newspaper. And I loved it. I loved writing about, thinking about gardens and gardening. But after a while, I got a little disenchanted with the way mainstream media covered, because, of course, you submit to a local newspaper and you feel great. And then you think, oh, I should reach bigger. And so I had things published in House and Garden and Gardens Illustrated and these big titles in the gardening mainstream world around the world. But the more I did that, the more I felt this disconnect between the way that gardening was being sold to us as kind of this commodity and this kind of status symbol destination that we could pick up at the big box store this weekend. And the way that I practiced gardening, or my fellow gardeners practice gardening. And I felt uncomfortable with that disconnect. Like I wanted to do more, and I wanted to talk about the great capaciousness of gardening across time and space. And so in 2007, my young family and I relocated to Northern California, and I took this opportunity of being in a brand new place with brand new gardening conditions to me, brand new plant palette, to kind of change up my own career arc. And I went to my public radio program and asked if they would like a garden program, and they said they would. And so for the next 8 years, I produced a very locally based 4-minute kind of public interest garden program, not about how to garden, but about interesting people doing things in gardening or gardening related in my greater region. And from there, it grew up into a 1-hour nationally syndicated program. And from there, the books kind of happened as an outgrowth, a branch of the podcast and the public radio program.
Right. So your latest book, What We Sow, where did you take off with that idea? I mean, because I think we get stuck in the thoughts that we either plant flowers, or we plant trees, or we plant vegetables, and hope they turn out, or use a little bit more. They've gotten a little bit more scientific on their veggies, but you still have that. Well, it might be a good year for tomatoes. It might not be.
It might.
So where did you dig into the deeper sides of that? Like, why are we growing a poisonous fruit?
Right. There are so many answers to that, right? Why we might grow a poisonous fruit. But, I think I have to actually backtrack a little to the first book. So if the mission of my public radio program is to kind of elevate and expand the way we think and talk about gardening, all of my books have been one way of doing that through a specific lens. So the first book was about women in leadership positions in the professional gardening world, and how and why they make a difference, not just to the horticultural world, but to the whole world based on what they're doing. And about 5 or 6 of these women were in fact seed keepers and seed scientists and indigenous seed knowledge holders. And that I found interesting. And then my second book, so if the first book was about people, the second book, Under Western Skies, focused on really good ecological gardens of the U.S. West and how they were designed and the plants they included and the methods for maintaining them so that they were really ecologically contributing, not just extracting from the places around them. And interestingly, a handful, maybe I think I covered 40 gardens in that book, and maybe 10 of them were all locally based seed grown. So like all of the plants, the seed was collected and then grown on and then planted in the garden. And I found that interesting. And so, in the last 4 or 5 years, as we've seen this big uptick in interest in gardening for a variety of reasons, for health, for economy, for mental relief from the rest of the world. I kept coming back to all of these plants we love, for all of these gardening we do and these gardens we tend. Almost all of them come back to seed at some level, right? And so that was what I spent sort of 2020 and 2021 researching is, how do larger disturbances in the world affect our seed supply and our therefore seed security? And of course, seed security ties right into food security and economic security and the environmental health of our places for biodiversity and climate resilience. And like that was kind of huge to me, that even though I've gardened all my life and I love plants and I can spout off all these Latin names, I didn't know enough about how seed is studied, how it has evolved over these 365 million years since the seed-bearing plants started evolving, and like who's in charge of our seed supply, who makes those decisions,
who does make those decisions.
Yeah, it's sort of it's mysterious, Aeson.
Well, because there's rumors, there's a certain M company that supposedly has control over our seed population. Then we're seeing seed keepers pop up and heirloom keepers pop up, which is great because, there are some plants that, even though they produce seeds, they're no longer growing seeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And this you summed up right there so much of what I had to dig into, and all these rabbit holes I had to go down. And yes, the rumors are true. There are 4 large multinational pharmaceutical chemical companies who control 60% of our seed supply. Now, that sounds like it is sort of horrific and worrisome, but that 60% of the seed supply is generally referring to large scale production of commodity seed. So we're talking about the largest seed crops grown in the world. These are, corn and wheat and soy, rice. There's a sort of handful of these seeds. So it's not all of our seed everywhere all the time, but it is worrisome because when you think about those exact seeds that I just mentioned, they're the staple food crops ancestrally of most populations around the world, right? We're talking about the, as we like to say, the meat and potatoes of food for most people and across time. And so to have those be in the control and decision-making purview of someone whose primary goal is to sell more chemicals and make more money, we might question if they are making the best decisions for the best reasons for all the rest of us.
Right.
And I explore this quite a bit in the book.
Right. You do.
And this prevalence, really astounding resurgence in the last, I would say 10 years of people on the ground across the globe fighting for seed integrity, seed sovereignty, the return of ancestral seeds to their specific peoples, whether that's in Botswana or it's in California. I mean, this has really gained traction, and the seed keepers who are the most passionate about this work have really set the scene so that the rest of us can be effective in helping by buying better seed and spending our money in better places and planting better seed in our places for food, for native plants, for herbs, for whatever it is you want them for.
Right. Well, let's take a trip back. Let's go 1840. If you were going to start a garden, where would you get your seeds from?
I'd probably come over to your house, or I'd meet you at the Grange. And I'd also look in my cupboard or under my bed, and I would find all the seeds that I had saved, or my mother or my grandmother had saved for us for the next season. And I would say, okay, I have my tomatoes, I have my green beans. I really wanted lima beans, but I don't have lima beans. Okay, mark that. I have a whole lot of this dry bean. I can take those to share. Then I would go and I would meet with, whether it was the coffee club or the quilting group or at the Grange with the farmers and gardeners. And we would swap, we would share our seed with our community, and we would hopefully get what we wanted and share what we had extras of for people who wanted that. So that was, by and large, the primary way that people obtained and regenerated seed going forward until the late 1800s, when, oddly enough, the United States government became the world's largest seed supplier for free in order to help fuel westward expansion. And they served the westward moving settler population with all kinds of seed in order to help them be successful and thrive when they got to where they were going. And there's kind of that sounds great, but there's some negative agenda there, because in helping the settlers to be successful at planting their European descent crops, they were also ensuring that land was taken over from native crops or native habitats that were being tended for food or medicine or utility.
Right.
So it was a double-edged sword for sure.
Right.
And then it wasn't until the early 1900s that the American Association, the Seed Association, became a lobbying influence to encourage the U.S. government to step out of that benefactor role in order for an economic seed industry to germinate and thrive. So.
And, then that kind of spiraled through. Then we had the Great Depression and the Wheat Bowl / Dust Bowl, which, I think they're using right now as a lot of means of like, well, you remember, if we don't do this, we're going to lose this crop. Well, we don't do this, we'll lose this crop. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I think that we should not lose the lessons of the past. We should also interrogate them to make sure we're actually understanding all sides of what that lesson might have been. For instance, plowing up the prairie in order to plant a whole lot of wheat fed people in the short term, but it destroyed some of our most important ecosystems at the same time. So I think the attention to soil health and ecosystem integrity, and trying to plant and sow and collect seed and save seed and grow plants with our ecological reality in mind, wherever we might live. Yours is going to be different than mine. That's, I think we all need to individually be attentive to that. But we also need to vote with our votes and our dollars that are decision makers at, our county resource conservation districts or our watershed districts or our master gardener extension agencies are also keeping this kind of balance in mind with what they share and teach us and propagate among us.
Right. Now, in West Virginia, they're having this seed run for veggie or something like that. It's a local West Virginia extension office thing, and I saw it and I was like, cool. So apparently I'm getting like kale seeds and carrot seeds and another seed to try, and these aren't seeds that we traditionally plant here. Like, I'm sorry, we're in zone 6B. It's not the best. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Why do you think there's this innate nature to return to gardening? Because if we were talking 4 years ago, it would have been like, yeah, this is a nice pastime. This is something to get you out and stress. But when we saw global events, like immediately with the bread and pasta, with the seeds, the potting soil, the fertilizer, and the canning jars.
Yeah.
The ball jars were going for $15 a jar on eBay, guys. I am not shitting you.
Yeah. I think the answer to that question is so, again, layered, because, anyone who's ever planted their beans or their okra, their, tomatoes, they know that it's economically less expensive and more efficient to just walk down to, Save Mart and buy them. But there is this data collected over the last 150 years that shows that every time there is a global disturbance or an economic downshift, humans return to gardening. It's not for economics. We know that. We might think it's for economics, but our rational mind knows that's not true. And so you have to come back to this. I have to come back to this theory that it is more about existentially engaging with our own survival than it is about actually feeding ourselves. We also know that you can only subsist on canned green beans for so long, right? That's not a whole diet.
Right.
And so, but there is this need in our reptilian brain to remember that we can engage with the world around us and feed ourselves a little bit. And that reassures us that we could be okay. I think then what happens once we've re-engaged with our survival and proven that we can, can a bean or knit a sweater or build a raised bed in our backyard. What happens once we do those things is it actually triggers this perspective that reminds us that we're just these tiny little things that are part of something much bigger. And I think that is reassuring. And I think it's one of the things that takes people back out into the garden every day, all year, is this beautiful connection to something that I can only really call like the divine, whether that's in the soil or in the air or in the weather or in the seasonal cycles. Like we remember that we're just a small blip in a long, long story. And that is, I think, comforting, oddly enough.
I think it is. I think that it's very therapeutic. I don't care if it's vegetables or roses. And I think that we have an innate pre-programming that is whenever, and I don't think it has to do with the downturn of the economy or the downturn of global, just, any double global thing. I think it's more so that we have that as soon as our brain gets that space, when we're, except not working a 70-hour job, not running into a car for 2.5 hours, not worried about where the market is going the next day. For some of us on those who are on retirement, that type of thing. I think reptilian brain is right. It's pre-programmed that says, go and garden, go connect with the earth, produce something, don't care what. Have you been able to find out where that started being part of the human existence? When we went from hunter and gatherer to creator, like where does that spark off at?
Well, the title of my program is Cultivating Place, Conversations on Natural History and the Human Impulse to Garden. And as far as I can tell, this impulse to garden is part of our genetic DNA, starting from earliest humans. So some of the oldest human remains, and I'm forgetting his name, but it was a small male found in the ice. And he was among the oldest human forms to have been discovered in fossil evidence. And he was a hunter-gatherer. They could, sort of surmise this based on his time period and the fact that he was a single person moving when he died. It looked like he got caught in a storm or something. But on his body, he had a tiny leather pouch that held, among other things, seeds. And what this reminds us is that, we have relied on plants since humans were first walking for our food, for our medicine, for our tents and our arrows and our bowls and for everything. And even as hunter-gatherers, we tended to those plants that tended to us. And so over these millennia, since humans and plants have been entwined, we have actually changed the face of the planet's plants with those we have chosen, right? Like we chose which rice to interbreed and to select and to share forward and to make sure perpetuated. The same with the wheat, the same with the corn. So we have grown the plants we wanted, and they now dominate the planet. And those plants have allowed us to survive. So I don't think there is a time at which we can't see the human garden, the human impulse to garden.
Okay.
Excuse me. I got all passionate there.
I know. So with that, where do you see it going?
You know, I think we stand actually at a really interesting intersection right now. And maybe people always think that about the times they live in, but I do think that we see that we're at a point on our planet, whether, again, we're in, you know, Peru or we're in West Virginia, we see that we've come to this point of social polarization, of environmental degradation, of climate change progressing, that we could either give up in despair because we are too damn busy trying to survive and say, whatever happens, I'm just trying to feed my family today. And some of us will have to say that. But there are others of us who might have a little bit of bandwidth and space and passion to say, is that really how I want this to go? Is that the end I really want us to have? Like, is that the end of the story that I'm going to invest in? Or is this other possible progression what I'd rather put my energy behind? And I think that resurgence of seed keepers and seed sowers and voices of activism around even this one issue of seed can really be seen as us possibly hitting a turning point, so that we are going to vote. We're going to vote for biodiversity and human diversity and greater justice. And we're never going to hit perfection, but I see more of us being agitated enough and frustrated enough that we're willing to try where we can in our own gardens to make a difference. And that feels powerful to me.
Right. And I feel it does. I also think that we're going to see a resurgence of home gardening, of home flower beds, especially with the honeybee problem right now. And in here, we're getting a lot of home beekeepers. Like my neighbor 3 doors down has like, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 hives. A friend of mine now has hives. This is something 20 years ago. What? You're doing what?
Right. Yeah. And it's, and it's interesting. I think, the honeybees, as very effective pollinators, are, of course, not native to North America. They were brought over from Europe in the 1800s. But I think even the fact that people are aware that when we had this blip of colony collapse disorder, and it really put the idea of pollinator decline on the map. And of course, we've evolved from there to understand that the honeybees are great, but we also have to really be paying attention to our native pollinators, to our bumblebees, to our flies and butterflies, and that it's not a simple problem, and it's not a simple fix, but it is a complex array that the more we understand about it, actually, the more interesting and beautiful it is, both the problem and the solution. And so that gives me hope.
Right. And I think it starts with, like, my neighbor 3 doors down. Simple conversations to cross the fence. Hey, I see you're not planting your garden this year. Can you throw this packet of seeds in there?
Yeah.
Sure, not a problem. What is it? Oh, it's wildflowers for the bees. And, oh, it's red, And then that in turn builds like a neighborhood ecosystem, because I think he's done it with like 7 or 8 houses.
Yeah.
That have like old flower beds that are not maintained.
Right.
I'm on in 3rd-generation neighborhoods, so it's like, yeah, that was grandma's flower bed. We just leave it alone. It doesn't grow anything.
Yeah.
Well, here's some seeds. Can you just throw those in it? That type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's where it starts, and then it leads up to like neighborhood gardens, and
yeah.
Oh, I've got a ton of squash. You've got a ton of your tomatoes done better this year. Let's swap.
Yeah.
But I think we run into the problem, and this is a problem I'm still like a little aggravated about. Is like, if I have a wonderful crop of tomatoes this year, and I save one of those tomatoes in seed form and go to plant it next year, it may or may not grow, because we don't know what seeds are now set to not produce.
Right. I talk about this in the book quite a bit, and that is the importance of doing a little research on where you get your seeds and saving that information. By law, by the Seed Law Act, a lot of this information is on your seed packet. So if it is open pollinated and heirloom, it both maintains this long-standing variety in the food supply chain, and it will produce fertile seed. If you get a fancy hybrid from a breeder, especially if it has a trademark or a patent behind the name, even if it did come true from seed, you aren't legally supposed to be growing it out. So if you are worried about that aspect of what will come true and what will produce fertile seed, definitely do your research on the company that grew it, how they grew it, and what you can expect from it in the next generation. And then because of seed swapping and us wanting to encourage it, kind of try and keep a tab on that information, like throw it all in a shoebox or a coffee tin, and so that you can pull it out and remind yourself, I really loved that purple Cherokee tomato. I think I'll plant it. I think I can save that seed.
Very cool. Very cool. And what about our city dwellers, or the ones that go, I want a garden, but I have no land?
This is another place where I think we're really seeing a fantastic resurgence and reinvigoration of the community garden plot. And that there are pea patches and community gardens and neighborhood gardens all over most of the cities that we can think of. And there are whole networks of these gardens in these cities. Like I can think of, Denver and Boston and Cincinnati and Dallas. And if you should, wherever you live, whatever city you live in, if it doesn't have a community garden, do what your neighbor did and talk to people who are nearby you and who might have a little land and say, hey, would you be willing? I had this great interview with this woman out of Chicago, and she and her friends really wanted to garden. And so they actually teamed up with a homeowner in their neighborhood in downtown Chicago that had a little backyard. And this person said, sure, come on, garden here. So sometimes it's a question of just looking at where the resources are and asking the question and seeing what happens. And because I think the other thing that's interesting is that more and more research is demonstrating the importance of green spaces in our cities to help things like migrating pollinators and birds to get across these barren landscapes of cities, and to help reintegrate our native plant ecosystems in what was otherwise a void. So adding native plants to urban spaces is proving to be very, very effective for both native plants, pollinators, birds, and other wildlife.
Right.
Really cool.
Very cool. And then I was looking at some of the new city designs, and they're doing rooftop green spaces.
Crazy cool. In Cincinnati, I visited with a a solar designer who was working with a lot of government and institutional buildings like the University of Cincinnati to put rooftop solar and rooftop gardens in place across the city. It was phenomenal. And of course, these rooftop gardens provide water catchment and filtration, provide sound and heat and cold loss and gain stabilization for these buildings. It decreases the amount of energy these buildings use and the amount of carbon and reflection they put back into the atmosphere. It's so great. Like, I'm not sure why we have any buildings going up in cities without a requirement that they have a rooftop green space of some variety.
Right, and I thought there used to be a law in city that a certain amount of space had to remain green in a city. Or was
that really depends. I wish that was true. I am afraid it's not. I believe that is the kind of building code that is determined city by city, county by county, state by state, and is probably subject to the vagaries of administration changes everywhere all the time.
Right, which sucks.
It kind of does.
In general. Yeah, because can you imagine them building a building in the middle of Central Park?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Insane, especially since Central Park has now been proven to be its own ecosystem.
Right, exactly. And it's full of beautiful snow today.
It is, and some lovely birds that apparently only live there now.
Yes, yeah, and I think some interesting plants that are kind of endemic now to Central Park and the work of the Central Park Conservancy. So really fun history.
Very fun. So where can they catch your podcast at? Where, you were saying you were syndicated some places. Is there a place they can get that at?
Oh, yeah. My website is cultivatingplace.com, and a new program comes out every Thursday. It starts on my public radio program, and then it rolls out to the other syndicating stations, including Cincinnati and across California. Other stations in Oregon and Colorado and Texas pick it up pretty regularly. But you can get the podcast, Cultivating Place, anywhere you get your podcasts. And you can get the books, the 3 books, anywhere you get your books. But you can read more about them at cultivatingplace.com.
Yep, the link is in the show description, guys. Well, thank you for sitting down with us. We're in January, and a lot of people don't think about this, but this is the time you have to start thinking your garden.
Yes.
What you're planting, where you're planting, especially if you want to get your seeds in the dirt by February 2nd.
Yes. I would remind people that you aren't too late yet, and to not rush it, because if you rush it, you will just have sad frozen seeds. So take your time, enjoy the process. Don't forget, this is the dormant season for a reason. Yeah, a good time for garden dreaming.
Yes, and planning. All right, darling. Thank you. Have a great evening. All right, guys, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Lady Gwendolyn here from Rowan Temple of Light, and I'm here to tell you about our events this summer. First up is Beltane in the Hills, May 13th, and that is from 1 to 6. We have entertainment, we have a bunch of vendors, we have a fairy photo shoot. It's going to be exciting. You having any questions, reach out to Earth Magic or to myself. After that, we have Central West Virginia Pagan Pride, August 19th. That's at Holly Gray Park from 11 to 5 for the day. And we will have Sarah Masters coming down from Pittsburgh to be our keynote speaker. We have some great classes for that. So if you want to get involved, reach out to rowantempleoflight@gmail.com, or just follow us along on Facebook at Rowan Temple of Light, and we look forward to seeing you out in the community. See you there.
Welcome back, goblins! My name is Jason, and I am the host of the Esoteric Book Club, a podcast that examines titles on the magical, paranormal, the mysterious, and the strange. I release 2 episodes a month in which I review books on esoteric topics, recap news of the weird, and conduct interviews with authors, practitioners, and experiencers. The Esoteric Book Club can be found on every major podcast service or can be streamed directly from esotericbookclub.org.
Hi, I'm Aeson Knight. I provide tarot readings covering everything from love and relationships to your life questions and your most spiritual answers. And also, I provide a lot of guidance in finances and divorces and all those relationship problems. So, if you'd like to get a reading from me privately, not on air, you can feel free to do so by visiting aesonknight.com and booking your appointment. I also provide on-demand services, so if your life is a little chaotic, you can go ahead and click that call now button there on my site. It'll connect you to Keen, and if you've not been with Keen before, you'll get 3 free minutes to talk with me, so that's great for a quick answer question. All right, guys, back to the show. Enjoy. Bye, y'all.
Hi, I'm Tracy Van. I provide a blended reading consisting of mediumship, psychic, and tarot cards. A reading from me can cover any guidance you need from relationships with your partner or your family, spiritual, financial, any questions you may need clarity on. If you would like to book an appointment with me, check out my website, tracyvann.com. That's TracyVann.com. I have bookings from 15 to 60 minutes you may choose from. That helps if you just have a quick question, need an answer, or if you're looking for a reading in more depth, I'm here to provide the guidance and clarity for you. Let's just figure it out. Bye.
All right. Hello, Joe, darling.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Oh, I'm in a morbid mood. Hello, Miss Brenda. Hello, Miss Shannon. How are you? Nice to see you.
Hey, Brenda. Hey, Shannon. Hey.
So we're changing our format a little bit tonight because I'm a little aggravated.
Yeah. This is one of those situations you're like, yeah, we're gonna cover that.
Well, we're going to cover a few multiple pieces of this.
Well, yeah,
because this is getting even
moving parts.
Yeah. Okay, let me compare. So starting out, I want to talk about this Mississippi jail that had 215 bodies buried behind it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, okay, here's the deal though. Not uncommon for tons of communities have paupers fields. Sometimes that's a state thing, sometimes that's just the local area, sometimes it's in conjunction with the cemetery, sometimes it's just a piece of, well, and usually is a piece of less valuable land. Not to mention, you typically want to put those in places that no one's going to complain. Prisoners generally don't complain about there being a cemetery.
Right.
So, that there's a cemetery behind a prison is not shocking.
Right. What's shocking is you find people that were not prisoners, that had wallets with freaking ID cards in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because typically your reasoning behind paupers fields is usually unclaimed body or unknown identity, or family refuses. Either they're financially incapable of providing or unwilling to.
Right.
And again, when you have prisoners, these things happen.
Right.
You know. If you're the only child, your mother's deceased, your father, committed crimes against you, it's not uncommon for a body to go unclaimed.
Right.
Like he was a horrible, despicable person, just, feed him into a wood chipper, it'll be fine.
Right.
State goes, well, we can't quite do that.
Right. And that's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But they've now found four people that they supposedly had active investigations searching for these missing people.
Mm-hmm. Where the record, the communication wasn't made to family. Identity wasn't discovered until, or clearly discovered until a re-examination of the body. And it's like, really, you didn't check the pockets?
Right.
And then there's, I think, two of them that it's kind of, why would you have not contacted the family?
Right.
And it sounds like most of what they're doing right now is just towing the line, the general line that I gave you guys earlier of like why people end up in paupers fields.
Mm-hmm.
Without really seeming to catch that, like, that's not relevant to the story right now. Like, that's background. Thank you.
Thank you. We know what a pauper's grave is. We've seen Hope Island.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then, like, during the 80s and 90s, lots of gay men with HIV. Both before we knew what we were dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then even after, because before we were burying, in many cases, thinking that this may be airborne, this could be blah, 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 blah. Right. Much like we did, because we started using paupers fields a lot more with the panini.
Right.
Because, again, it got to a point that it's like, bury the deceased quickly.
Right.
Just
quickly.
Trying to help limit spread. But then we turn around and, like, even after we had more knowledge about what HIV and AIDS were, we still had families that refused.
Right.
Like, because there was the immediate knowledge that, well, the way that you get HIV, for family members that often, once a family put two and two together, wanted nothing to do with the body.
Right.
Which is horrifically sad, but it does happen.
Right.
So we know what a pauper's field is.
Yes, we know what a pauper's field is. Thank you. And then it just gets worse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's
like they're finding them just put into body bags, which, for those that don't know, body bags are literally large trash bags with a zipper. They weren't buried properly. It is 6 foot to a grave. Everyone knows this. 6 foot by 3 foot by 6 foot. These are the dimensions of a grave. They're finding them buried so far as 2 feet below ground.
Ooh. Now there's also a thing that happens, especially with paupers' graves.
Right.
So it sounds like this one, though, is supposed to be a tagged grave.
Right.
Like one body, one spot, with a marker, one body, one spot with a marker, on down the line. For some paupers' graves, those are mass burial.
Right.
In which they effectively stack.
Right.
And so there's like a marker, and if they did ever actually have to dig it up, it's going to be an archaeological experience.
Exactly. And at the same time, they didn't even put them in a pine box. They didn't put them in a cardboard box. They put them in a plastic, very low ply trash bag, basically.
Trash bag with handles.
Right.
Capable of supporting the weight of an adult human.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
okay. Clothed. And what clothes they were found in?
Yeah, that's typically, I mean,
Normally, you find a body, you should at least check its damn pockets. I mean, there were car keys in this one person's thing.
oh, good grief. Well, yeah, because again, typically personal effects should be stored separately.
Right.
I don't know necessarily about clothing burial. Like if there is suspicion of a crime, the clothing should become an item stored in evidence.
Right.
And plus it would kind of be inappropriate.
Right.
Like we typically dress our buried dead.
Right.
Typically.
Right.
But no, it basically sounds like, for lack of any nice way to say it, scrape them up off the side of the road or wherever you find them, chunk them in a bag, chunk them in a hole, cover the hole.
Right.
Keep moving.
Yeah.
Without
Don't inform
actually
the family. They didn't even check it. He had a state ID, a credit card, and other identifying information in his wallet that he was buried with in his back pocket. He had car keys in his front pocket.
roll the body.
Yeah.
It's not like putting a wallet in a back pocket is really all that wow.
Yeah. It ain't that normal. And, but he was unidentified.
Yeah.
And since then, go for it.
Well, I was going to say that begs the question, like, is this, like, depending upon how many bodies they find situated, the same?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to become a question of, is this just an unfortunate few events that all came to light at the same time?
I don't know. It's disclosed more than 20 homicides that took place over the course of 2023. In October, the agency finally released the names of the people who had been killed. Morris families were shocked to see the name of their child on that list. So they knew who this person was.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even inform the family. Like, is the left hand not telling what the right hand is doing?
Well, that was going to be my question: is this an immediate series of events, and just like one mishandling after another that all occurred in short duration, or is this a systemic problem in a way that cases are getting dumped quickly?
I don't know.
Don't die on a holiday.
Apparently not. But when the family went to see him exhumed and make sure that he made it to the thing, it was supposed to begin at 11:30 a.m. They started at 8 a.m. so the family couldn't get there.
Yeah.
And then when they arrived, the body was so degraded they couldn't even have a funeral. It had to be a closed casket funeral. Why? Not because it was embalmed, not because it was put into a box, not because it was organized correctly on how anybody else's remains on this planet for the past 300 years since the Civil War has been required to do, but because it was basically thrown in a trash bag and thrown in the ground.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they very much did not want the family to see the condition of burial.
Right.
So basically show up and like, no, here's your body. Goodbye.
Right.
Like we do not want you here for exhumation.
Right.
And again, that starts tipping the scale towards it's a systemic problem.
Right.
As in, what's going on.
Right.
Not this is an unfortunate series of incidents that, happened. We're horribly sorry for the mishandling and mistreatment. We've identified, like that's not going to be where the story goes.
Right.
Is what it's starting to feel more and more like is it's going to be, no, this is a systemic body dump.
Well, what I don't get is what the mayor says. The mayor says his administration regrets the way the Wade families endured, and at the same time emphasized that the investigation did not reveal police misconduct or malicious intent. How can you tell from a bag of bones? You didn't need the basic investigation.
Right. And that's going to be kind of the realities here of it, is trying to control the narrative of like, well, there was an investigation, no wrongdoing was found, and it was a true accident, and like, please forget this story.
215 accidents? That's a lot. Like, if that was my insurance company, they would already canceled me.
Well, and again, this starts to really get into the question of how many of these bodies were legitimately buried because no one claimed, because they were unidentifiable, clearly unidentifiable. And then what proportion of this, and may have occurred decades ago, and at what point did this switch over to improper handling? And then where in there did this become a complete disregard? Like, we're not even going to try to figure out who they are. We're not going to do the basics. Not even an autopsy, but just the basics of a forensics examination, like wallet, keys, cell phone, like what we got in the pockets. Does this look like foul play? Maybe figure out some blood work. Maybe take some tissue samples. But then it goes one step further. Because it just doesn't. It's not even an attempt at this point to act shocked and surprised that this has occurred. It's just really trying so desperately to keep anyone from like picking up the story and wanting to run with it. Is like, there's nothing to see here. When it's like, but is it?
Well, what gets me even more so is nobody's talking about it. Okay, like, we're talking about it. There's a few other podcasts out there talking about it. There's some TikTokers talking about it. NPR has talked about it just recently. Like, we had to go and do some real digging here to find the original story from NBC that's on their back page. Like, I'm talking dig to get this information. This is terrible. But it even goes farther. Like, this was like the Hill of crap we got into. And this is why, like, we're not doing Are You an Asshole tonight? We're not doing, relationship advice. We're digging into two other things going on with human bodies. Let's move on to the next one.
Alrighty, so that's the Alabama. Yeah, so this one's nothing short of grave robbery. 2 families allege bodies of Alabama, because we just came from Mississippi, now we're in Alabama. Prison inmates were returned missing organs. So, yeah. Now this story's weird. And I really want to zoom in first on the penultimate weirdness, because I did not know this. Whoa. I mean, maybe it falls into the category of things people don't know or better left unknown. But I really thought that I thought you were required. So there's a quote here. It's at the very end of the article. "We only conduct autopsies with consent or authorization and follow standard procedures equitably for anyone consented to or authorized for an autopsy," Rowan said. "In an autopsy, organs and tissues are removed to best determine the cause of death. Autopsy consent includes consent for final disposition of the organs and tissues. Unless specifically requested, organs are not returned to the body.
Say that again. Organs are not returned to the body.
Yeah, unless specifically requested. I'm sorry, what? Like, I'm just struggling with, one, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't
Right.
you? Two, what? Like, I thought that was a requirement.
Yeah. I
Like,
thought
they
so
take
too.
it out, they weigh it, they take photos of it, they can do all kinds of things with it, and then it's
Right.
okay, like, kind of ugly thought, but yeah, here's your sandwich baggie, and back in the body it goes, sew it back shut, all the organs are there. Because most religious funerals don't like missing organs unless you are specifically agreeing to organ donation.
Right.
Like, and that's why a lot of people don't, is because fundamentally they have an incomplete body for their afterlife, and
All right, so let's dig back into this. So 2 families are claiming that the Alabama Department of Corrections returned bodies of their loved ones who died in prison. They were found to be missing 1 or more organs, the court documents show. When Charles Edward Slogan died of age 74, was incarcerated in Hamilton Age and Enforcement Center in Hamilton, about 90 miles northwest of Birmingham. The chapel of the prison told the family the correction department would take care of the funeral arrangements. According to the affidavit signed January 3rd by its daughter, Drake said that she told the chaplain the family wanted to make the arrangements and asked that the body be transported to their funeral home. But when the body arrived, the funeral director informed her there was a difficulty in preparing his body for viewing, as the body was already in a noticeable state of decomposition, and the internal organs, including his brain, was missing.
Yeah, that's not supposed to happen.
Right. The funeral director said the organs were normally placed in a bag and put back in the body after autopsy, but not in this case.
What? Like, how sloppy was your autopsy?
Like, that's my question.
How busy is your coroner?
Right.
That, like, there's just, like, human remains in a baggie on a table and, like, oopsies. Or, like, did you sew them up in someone else? Like, what occurred?
Well,
like, I'm really struggling.
They suggest that the Department of Corrections to release his body, and the Dalton family is another one, that when they did, 5 days later, the body had not been properly stored and had severely decomposed. Both families believe that the Department of Corrections or the University of Alabama are using them for medical testing without authorization.
Yeah. Well, because that's like pretty much your prison sentence ends in death.
Right.
Like you regardless of who you are or what you did, you quit being an asset of the state of Alabama.
Right.
At death.
Right.
Like, if you're not released before then, certainly at death, you quit being a prisoner.
Right.
And at that point, regardless of what you've done or who you are or any of the things therein, you are afforded the right to a proper burial, because quite frankly, death and burial and funerals have far more to do with the family than the deceased.
Right.
So you're not disrespecting the inmate.
Right.
The inmate's dead.
Right.
Now, granted, we have laws that do call it desecration of corpse, and we do generally refer to it as disrespect for the dead. But ultimately, you're disrespecting the family.
Right.
And like the person can even become secondary to that, in my opinion. Not that they should, but if even if you do not think the prisoner themselves deserved to be properly buried and handled and given due respect for their corpse, the family, like you're gonna put someone else's family through this.
Right. And I understand that there's one thing to volunteer your body for medical science. And that's a very brave, right. That's a very brave and comparable thing. But that's something you get to make the choice of. Your family gets to make the choice of. That is not something that the Department of Corrections of any state or federal organization gets to make the choice of. That's been very made clear by court documents.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this should exist.
Right.
In terms of, like, at what level of human cruelty must you exist at that even if you think that people should go to prison, be treated like, pure chattel property of the state of Alabama. One, that prisoner is now deceased. What level of cruelty do you have to be at to continue to inflict punishment on a corpse? Like, that's kind of a moment of like, do we have the right people locked up? Like, are y'all on the right side of the bars or the wrong side today?
Well, and exactly where this goes, because like the Moore family in Mississippi, they've already had one, like the Jackson family police have already killed one of their family members. Now we have a second one appearing up in a pauper's grave, unnotifying the family. And if people hadn't blown the whistle because of the smell coming from the field,
which
would have never known
which occurs if you don't properly bury the deceased.
Yes.
One, if you don't properly prepare the body, and two, if you really only shallow grave the deceased.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to have issues. You're going to attract wildlife. There's going to be some digging. There's going to be smell. There's going to be issues.
Right.
This is why we have things like you dig 6 feet deep and put a corpse in.
Right.
Because it reduces, one, if nothing else, it traps that underground.
Right.
As much as possible. And two, it gets into a level of depth that you do not have wildlife.
Right.
Generally investing the effort.
Right. Now, I'm checking something. Because they do have a board of funeral services.
Oh, it's probably going to be just as bad as West Virginia's.
Well, if so, then embalming should be required.
Well, I mean, in terms of the board of the funeral board of West Virginia,
right?
Need we remind people? is a backslapping social organization that cannot figure out how to impose a penalty.
Right.
Rarely investigates anything, and even when they do, typically either finds no wrongdoing or creates such sweetheart deals.
Right.
Because in West Virginia, this is the same organization that, as a funeral home director, that we had a funeral home director that effectively was cashing pre-need arrangements.
Right.
So, like, you go in on Monday, you set up your pre-need arrangement, they will let it set till like March or whatever they need some cash, and then they will file a phony death certificate, cash out pre-need. And this is how this business was continuing to operate.
Right.
And then good luck is the family trying to figure out, like either the funeral home had to eat it when it occurred, or what pre-need arrangement. We don't have a pre-need arrangement.
Right.
So yeah, it's yeah. So anyway, lovely Alabama.
Right.
What's their lovely setup?
Well, I'm looking at Mississippi, because Mississippi, I'm bouncing back there a minute, because it hit me that, you have to, in most places, you have to put them in a casket.
Yeah, burial requirements by state.
Right.
Yeah, that's typically a thing too. Typically, there are literal laws listing the things you cannot do to a corpse.
Right.
And what constitutes disrespect of a corpse, disrespect of a grave, inappropriate handling of remains.
Right.
Like, it's not like we haven't had laws for this shit.
Exactly.
Like, seriously, we have them. We've been following them. It's generally not a hard bouncy ball to follow.
Well, apparently a human body burns with its casket, container, or other materials in the cremation chamber. That is a law in Mississippi.
So you have to buy a casket to be cremated. Although, what
cardboard box.
Cardboard box constitutes a casket.
A casket is defined as a rigid container that is designed to encase the human remains, and it is usually constructed of wood, metal, fiberglass, plastic, or like materials, or orientated or lined with fabric, which may or may not be combustible.
Okay. So yeah, theoretically.
Right.
Stiff cardboard.
Right.
And I'm not making fun here of anyone's choices. Like, if you're gonna be cremated, I am wholeheartedly with the idea that you should not have to go spend $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 on a casket.
Right.
Seems dumb.
Yeah. So, one, Mississippi violated the laws because, according to the funeral board, that is not a casket.
Nope.
And body bag is not a casket.
Nope. So they've already violated the law there. Right. Then we start moving into the issue of, like, what other laws did they violate? Like,
informing family, all of that.
Well, and then we also have issues like, were they required to embalm?
Checking. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no. As much as they're trying to downplay this.
Yeah.
They're
yeah. And of course, the JOD has to get its act in there, point blank. And they also need to be looking into Alabama. Alabama is even worse. Like, these are two. These are two that were caught.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go two caught with 100 down, that's at least 200 bodies that's got hearts and livers and lungs just floating around. Oh, nobody know where they went.
That's if at this point you can even prove it.
Right.
Because this is going to be the long-term problem in this is every day those bodies are in the ground, they're degrading more.
Right.
Because if you're not properly preparing them for burial, you're not properly burying them, period. Right. That's bones and goo quickly turning to just bones.
Right. And pollution. The important part is pollution.
Because they're well, we don't necessarily know that the overall field isn't lined. Because you can do individual liners. Or you could treat it like one giant liner. The typical only requirements are that you do not have leakage.
Right.
That's my assumption. I don't know that legally you could do that, but I would think as long as you hit the mark, and given that it's a pauper's field, if you at least hit the actual EPA concern, that okay, we'll go fast and loose with that one. That no, we're not individually vaulting, we're burying in a vaulted field.
Right. Or a clay-based field. Okay. So, that led Ace into another story that's just heartbreaking. It's in your private chat.
Oh, so we know her smile. Family members of missing women say they found human remains. So the family of a South Carolina woman who has been missing since August says they are infuriated after finding exposed remains they believe to be hers. Melissa Aguilar, 49, of Holly Hill, was last in contact with family on August 17th, according to Orangeburg County Sheriff Leroy Ravenel. Aguilar's sister, Sarah Shipman, said investigators told her Thursday that remains were found in Holly Hill less than half a mile from Aguilar's home. After asking neighbors for an approximate location, she and Aguilar's two daughters, Brittany Rainier and Shanna Brown, went to the site the next day hoping for closure. As I was hugging my nieces and consoling them, I looked down and found my sister's jawbone between my feet, Shipman said. After rushing her nieces out of the woods, Shipman said she returned to the site. I went back out there to see if that's what I had really seen. I found her dental work and close to 20 more pieces of my sister that they had walked over and left behind, she said. They immediately alerted the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office, who did not respond to our request for comment on their findings. The Orangeburg County Coroner's Office arrived on the scene about 3 hours after the family's call. Was it just fucking amateur hour?
Oh, this gets worse.
Oh, Shipman said investigators promised to collect the rest of the remains Monday. When she and Brown returned to the scene Tuesday, they found what appeared to be several more bones and a tooth. I knew there was something telling me there was more, Shipman said. Rainier describes her mother as the glue to the entire family. It's hard to list all the amazing things about her because she was so much more than anyone could describe, Rainier said. Yeah, Shipman said the lack of care from the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office through the entire investigation has traumatized their family. That's probably an understatement from hell. If the Sheriff's Department is not capable of doing a job correctly, leaving my sister behind, they should own up and call in outside resources. The Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office did not respond to the family's claim that they mishandled the investigation. Quote, the investigation to Miss Melissa Aguilar going missing is an active and ongoing investigation, Ravenel said in an email. We are still asking the public for any information regarding Miss Aguilar. If you have any information in this case, you are urged to contact us.
What's worse is they went back out with news crews 5 days later.
Oh,
5
God,
days.
It gets worse.
Yeah, 5 days later, while they're with news crews, cameras on them talking about this incident, they find more of Miss Aguilar's bones.
Oh, God.
Just laying there. Like the pen on my desk, just laying there.
I'm sorry,
blind?
the first time you get called out because there are remaining remains, I think you should try to make real sure you got all of them. But at the third time you've been called out, I would think you would stay until you have gone through that entire area with a pair of tweezers. Like no stone, no leaf, no pine needle left unturned. Until you are 100% sure there is nothing. Nothing here.
Yeah.
Because at the point in which a fourth return to the scene, because you have the initial response, which allowed them to notify the family. The family notifying you that they were just out there and found a jawbone. A return when they find, a tooth and more bones.
Right.
And now, fourth time. 4 attempts.
How are they finding any other forensics? Okay. If the family is contaminating the site and they found a jawbone and about 20 other bones.
Yeah.
All right. So 206 minus 30. What did you pick up to begin with? Her femur and rib bones?
Does ask some questions that you would think someone would have paid attention. There seems to be a shortage here.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like take some time. Take all the time you need. See if there might be other bits, parts, and pieces.
Right.
At least the third time you went out.
Right.
Like, I cannot imagine. Because somewhere, someone's boss should be, by this point, going, when you didn't get everything the first time,
right,
I could understand how accidents could happen. When you didn't get everything the second time, I thought surely in 3 visits, you would have already figured out, but now we're up to 4. Like, I'm thinking that 4th trip out comes with a do not come back here.
If there is a leaf still on that ground.
Better yet, I want you to go out there with an entire list of bones in the human body. And I don't care what you have to do. You don't return here until every single last bone is accounted for.
Right.
Like, just don't even think about coming back.
Right.
Just stay there.
How many of us have seen on CNN, on live TV, them doing these excavations, piece by piece, grime cert by grid by grid.
Yeah. I am not saying that I don't expect that in many cases there has been an unfortunate inability to locate all bones.
Right.
And that perhaps, not that we typically want to think about it, a tooth, a chip of a tooth, a pinky bone, some tinier bones in the body, like within the ear,
Right.
might have been missed. A jaw?
Yeah.
How do you miss a jaw?
Right.
Like somewhere between picking up the skull, I hope they picked up the skull. That should have been your next question is where's the jaw?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of go together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Shannon's pointing out that Brenda's pointing out not like they were hidden or hard to find considering it's just sitting by her feet. Shannon says, I was listening while doing something else, missed a bit. Did they find the bones in the same spot as before? Or
Yes.
did they just search the immediate surrounding area and find more further away? No, this same place. This is not like an animal just carried it off. Or, I mean, if this animal's bringing it back, it is very organized.
Right.
Like, it knows exactly where to lay it.
Right.
What the hell?
Right. Now, I'm not going to show this on air. I will put this into the Patreon if you want to go see the original article where they show the family.
Oh, God.
Because, again, the news was there. Doing an interview. And she just looks down and it's like,
oh, look. That's odd. That looks like human remains.
That looks like my sister's smile. That looks like my sister's tooth. That looks like my sister's spine.
Ugh. Like the nightmare. Like, I don't... Again, the first time was... Okay, that was a mistake.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I will grant most people a one-time fuck up and be like, okay, that was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do it better this time. Do it way better this time. Four attempts now?
To get one body.
To get one body. Like, tell me you're bad at your job without telling me you're bad at your job. Well, it took me 4 attempts to pick up human remains, and we hoped there was not going to be a 5th.
Right.
Because at this point, it's moved beyond, like, you know, an oopsie into theater of the macabre.
Right.
To what do you even call this? Like, if there's a 5th trip out because more remains were found.
Right.
What do you even call that?
Right.
Like, I don't know, theater of the absurd?
Right.
Like, intent? Like, are you intentionally doing this?
Right.
Like, what please explain yourself as a human being.
Right.
If there has to be a 5th attempt. Or I think you should explain yourself as a human being, but hey, let's hope that the 4th attempt, they got everything.
Right.
But I don't get how this even happens.
Right.
Like, how are you this bad at your job?
Right.
Like, you have lay people,
Mm-hmm.
not in your field,
Mm-hmm.
walking up and identifying bones.
Yeah.
I mean, it does not sound like they were out there doing, like, you know, little home archaeology with a paintbrush.
Right.
It just kind of seems like they're walking around in the woods
Mm-hmm.
and finding bits of a body.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
How? Why? Why is the South having problems with bodies again?
How is this hard? Well, Shannon points out, I know some animals can carry body parts like 25 plus miles. I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if we were talking about like remains were found scattered all over the city.
Right.
Okay, that's an animal thing. And yeah, there comes a point in which you have cleared the scene that you are at.
Right.
And yes, you may get a next phone call. We found an arm, we found a leg, we found a toe.
Right.
And unfortunately, like, that can happen. But if you're in the same immediate area, if you just keep walking back to the same spot,
right,
and you keep finding more bones, I don't think that the bones just appeared. So why didn't you find them the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you can have animals that do take parts of a body.
Right.
Unfortunately, it will feed an animal in the woods. And those can be scattered over a large geographical area, depending.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep walking back to the same spot, it's not like the animal waited for you to leave and then brought out a jawbone.
And then teeth. And then other parts, like arm bones, hand bones. These are easily distinctable things. They don't look like sticks. Anyone who's took an anatomy knows what these look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now we're not really struggling with, like, xaphoid process.
No.
We're sitting here with, like, it's a jawbone or a femur.
Right. Oh, yeah, coyotes can carry them 25 miles. This isn't coyotes.
No.
This is missing it. Like,
just... I walked in to exactly where...
Here's pieces. Yeah. They walked in to exactly where the police had originally came, according to the neighbors, and there laid a jawbone. They come back with the news story to show them, what they found, when they found 4 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more bones.
That's pretty bad at your job.
Well, that's more than pretty bad. I hope the family sues them off the ass.
But there becomes the interesting point. Are they suable?
Yes.
Like,
Matter of fact, one of my favorite TikTok attorneys is already on the case in South Carolina. Law, what is her name? I call her Lori. What is her TikToker? Yeah, lawyer Lori is on the case. She's already made the TikTok. We'll show them.
Oh, I'm sure that's fun.
Here we go. This is what she had to say.
Oh, I'm sure these will be great comments.
8th of 2023. On Thursday, a week and a half ago, investigators found remains about a half a mile from her home that they believed to be those of Melissa Aguilar. Investigators notified Melissa's family, specifically her sister, Sarah Shipman, of their findings, and Sarah, along with Melissa's 2 daughters, went out to the scene to try and get some closure. But instead, what they found were additional remains of their sister and mother. Specifically, Sarah Shipman said that she knew her sister's smile and that she had to see that smile in the dirt. She found 20 additional pieces of remains that law enforcement had not collected. When she called law enforcement, they said, "Don't worry, we'll be back out there on Monday to get them." That is 4 days away. Sarah and Melissa's 2 daughters, along with the news crew, went back out there on Tuesday, believing that the remains had been collected. But this is what they found.
Monday, but when I went with them to look today, are you kidding me? They found what appeared to be several more bones and a tooth. Like, these are her bottom teeth. More bones.
So let's see if we can get this timeline straight. Thursday, a week and a half ago, law enforcement found remains that they believed to be Melissa Aguilar's about a half a mile from her house. After collecting the remains, they informed her sister, Sarah Shipman, that they had found these remains. So Sarah took Melissa's 2 daughters out to the site where they found 20 additional pieces of remains that had not been collected. When they called law enforcement and said, "You missed some," they said, "Don't worry, we'll be back there on Monday." It was Thursday. So on Tuesday, Sarah Shipman and the 2 daughters went back out there with the news crew, only to find additional pieces that law enforcement still had missed. Get your shit together, Orangeburg County. No family should have to go through that. They can't unsee that. It will be a lasting memory. It's unthinkable that they had to go through that. My thoughts and prayers are with the family of Melissa Aguilar, Sarah Shipman, her 2 daughters, and the rest of her family.
I mean, that basically sums it up. I mean, it's where we've been for this. It's just like, no. Like, oh my God. How do you fuck up that bad?
I don't know. At this point, I am unsure. No, they have confirmed the remains. Finally.
Yes.
That they have. Hopefully the family... Oh, I don't have time for you, Prince. Go away. Hopefully the family will get some action here.
Yeah. We haven't even gotten to the point that it took them 4 days. Like, I understand the body's already deceased. It is not that kind of emergency. Like, follow along with me. Like, no reason to spill your coffee or drop your donut. I get that. Like, the deceased is already deceased. We're real sure of that. She's not going to get much more deceased. In the time, that it would take you to finish a coffee and polish off a donut. I don't expect you to run to your police car. You can walk calmly. But 4 days?
Yeah.
How big was that coffee?
Right.
Like, what were you dealing with for 4 days?
Right.
And again, I don't even necessarily need an officer to go out there. I mean, it may be required, but I would think that at least you could free up someone from the medical examiner's office to go over. Just, again, no reason to spill your coffee or drop your donut.
Right.
It's not that kind of emergency.
Right.
But 4 days.
Right.
Seems excessive. As your first available pickup time.
Right.
I can get groceries at Kroger faster.
Yes. You can get groceries at the good Kroger faster.
I don't even need it to be the good Kroger. I'm just saying. I would think there would be a little more rush.
Yeah.
Just a touch. Of course, then again, if I were trying to get groceries and had 4 fuck-ups, I'm pretty sure someone would be out of a job from how angry I would be.
Possibly.
I like how you guys say Kroger like we use bougie Kroger. Okay, in our area, we actually have a really nice Kroger, so it could technically be called a bougie Kroger. But we rate them in this area because we have technically multiple. Like, we have to drive to Beckley for, 2 more? 3? 2.
2 more.
2 more. Yeah, that's an experience. So technically our Kroger nearest our house is our preferred Kroger.
Right.
But hell, even that damn Beckley Kroger could have figured this out.
Right.
Like put some of their people on it, I'm pretty sure within at least 3 attempts.
Right.
They could come up with everything that was supposed to be there.
Right.
Like, I have faith in the crappiest Kroger I have literally ever set foot in.
Mm-hmm.
To it within 3 trips, collect all of a human body.
Right. All 206 bones. And account for them. There's this lovely graph they have to color in on which ones they have. Not to count the forensic evidence that they obviously have missed. Like, the defense attorneys are going to be able to walk through this without a problem. Any case they bring now.
Oh, wow. So speaking of Krogers, apparently, we have Ghetto Kroger, Gross Kroger, and Bougie Kroger because it's so extra, LOL. The only thing that it doesn't have that the one in Columbus I went to had was the station where you can bring your own containers and get discounted refills on a lot of things. Fair enough. But yeah, like we're
them. South Charleston is Bougie Kroger's, Ghetto Kroger's is St. Albans, and Gross Kroger's is the one there in downtown Charleston, over by the food line.
Yeah, even McDonald's can get an order right in 3 tries.
Surprisingly, recently they've been getting it right in 1 try.
I know, right?
Strangely. But we have police departments hiding bodies, point blank hiding them for people.
Mm-hmm. Like, because it's kind of hard to read that story and,
not see it for what it
conclusion. Is. You're hiding some people.
Right. Okay.
Oh, so Ghetto Kroger is Cross Lanes, Gross is St. Albans, Bougie is Taze Valley.
I ain't tried Taze Valley. You got to try South Charleston. That one's very bougie.
There you go. Oh, and I think there's a Ghetto Kroger in South Charleston, but I don't go there. It's too far. Ouch.
Yeah, but no, the one by Corridor G, it has lovely sushi. It has the olive bar. It has the Mediterranean bar, and it has all the like chef-made stuff right there. Like, you can watch them make your lunch.
Oh. But can they get your order right in 3 tries or less?
Yes.
Awesome. Again, so, okay, I've got a question before, and I know we're running. And that was South Carolina.
Where are we looking at?
I'm looking for medical examiner technician salary, South Carolina, on that last story.
Right, in Orangeburg County.
Yeah, I don't even care about the county.
Okay.
All right, do y'all understand that the average salary is $41,000 or about $20 an hour? They are paying people who in 3 attempts cannot collect all of the remains of a human body more, significantly more, than they are probably paying their average McDonald's worker.
What gets me more is we look over at the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office, and you think there would be a statement on this, am I right?
Yeah. Well, here's my thing, though, and they're expecting the family, the viewing public, all the people in their area, to have more patience in this situation than you would have if you got the same damn bag from the same damn McDonald's worker 3 fucking times with your order wrong, went back a 4th time,
right,
and still it was wrong.
Right.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, there's a post about when they found her missing. They've not met the sheriff department has not made a statement on their social media about finding the body, about any of it.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
That's convenient.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like they want people to forget this story exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shannon points out it must not be an election year for sheriffs.
Must not be.
Like, I don't know how anyone forgets that. I mean, certainly that family's not going to forget it.
Right.
I could even argue that maybe the general viewing public would have forgotten it, but not for.
Right.
You live on air found remains.
Right.
Seriously. 4 times.
Live on air. Live on air.
Yeah. I mean, that's just... There's not words. I am so sorry this family is having to go through this. That's the words.
I'm
there's
sorry
no
for all
reason.
these families. Like,
Yeah,
no
none
reason.
of these.
Right.
No, none of it should happen. Period. End of discussion. This shouldn't happen.
Right. The case in Jackson, Mississippi, that's ridiculous. The case in Alabama, that's just fucking scary.
Yeah.
And now we have to go and process our own family's bodies. What I mean to process them is retrieve the bones, document the evidence, take pictures of the evidence, and tell the cops where to come get it. And hopefully they'll pick it up faster than UPS will pick a package up from my house.
I mean, one would have thought that was implied, but,
Yeah.
How? That's the the overwhelming question in each of these stories is how.
Right.
How?
Right.
How do you think this makes sense? How do you think this is like even an attempt at doing your job? How? How
Right.
does this occur?
Right.
Even just in general, how does this even occur?
Right.
Why would this occur? In what circumstance?
Right.
Does that occur? Again, I would think that yes, there's a degree of training required to handle a body, properly bury a body, and I can almost accept some mistakes were made. Could occur in a very small percentage of situations.
Right.
Like, not everything runs perfect all the time. No one's asking for perfection. I do not start on first attempt at fixing my McDonald's order with trying to punch someone. Now, let me tell you, at attempt 4, I'm going to be real tempted to punch someone because my fries are wrong.
Right.
I don't understand at what point you think 4 attempts to pick up a body.
Right.
And the family's going to be anything other than out for blood.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, your whole community should be out for blood. I don't get how you do what it very clearly appears to be using your inmate population for medical science sales and don't expect a family to have an issue.
Right.
And I don't get how you bury a body without checking the pockets and just like throughout the situation, mishandle, improperly handle, do everything you can to thwart the family at every turn, leave them dangling on a missing persons case.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't think there's a family member involved here who doesn't have the right to punch someone in the face. I'm not trying to encourage violence. I'm just going, I show up to you struck a law enforcement official, trial as a juror. I'm going to have to drop myself out real quick.
Right.
No, I don't think I can be impartial in this one, Your Honor.
Right.
I would have punched him too.
Right.
Needed your jury pool, but I answered honestly.
Well, and what I don't get is in all these cases, well, the Jackson, Mississippi case worries me, and here's why. If you already know this family has a history with your department, you've already had to pay them millions with this department. Anything around that family, you should handle with fucking kid gloves. Make sure every I is dotted, every T is dotted. So if the mayor's going, oh, really? You put a body in a trash bag out in the middle of a damn field and didn't even inform them that it was their child that you found on the side of the road in a hit and run.
Yeah. Oh no. So we have some commentary here. So Shannon says we're going to have to follow this and see if the sheriff tries to sue the media outlet or the family for costing him an election if it comes up election time. Brenda points out maybe Uber the bones tagged and labeled to the medical examiner with pics and details. Then ours got to the point I checked the bag and they'd say, pull down the flagpole and we'll bring missing item to me. No, thank you. I'll wait here. Other customers are waiting. Yes, and they will. Get through faster if you quit arguing and bring my items. Too many mess ups in a row with long waits. No. Again, the general populace give you about 3 screw-ups on a fast food order before we're about fighting mad.
Yeah.
I don't know what the appropriate number of mess-ups handling human remains is, but I'm going to go out on a limb for the general public and say it's less than the number of times you can fuck up my fries. I think that should be a t-shirt.
Right.
I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say it's less times than you can screw up my fries at a McDonald's.
Right. All right.
Yes. So that was an eventful show.
Well, that was an eventful show. Now we're going to do a palate cleanser, some good news, and then we're going to be done.
Okay.
Okay. So those watching Sister Wives, of course, we all saw Christine's wedding. It was very enjoyable. Through the 2-spot episode. Well, we worried about Janelle and Mary and exactly what's going to be going on with them. Well, 1 hour ago, this is breaking news. We may have just broke a YouTube record. Mary Brown has announced that she is dating a new guy. He's not 6'6", nor is he a pilot, but he loves Christmas as much as she does, and they laugh a lot together, which are both important elements for a good relationship. Y'all guys want to get a look at this one?
Sure. Bring it on. Bring on the photos. Oh. Okay, the puppy picture's cute.
Yes. She also got a dog. He is a
Did
cutie.
the puppy come with the dog or no?
No.
What? Her track record?
I know.
I was just going to go ahead and, let's not build that pedestal for him too high.
Oh, I think that season 19 is now going to be even more interesting. Because we got Christine married, Janelle's launching a business, and basically Christine's sidekick, and Mary has a new man.
Yes.
Cody has got to be fuming fucking mad.
I would say it's going to be a lot of explosive drama.
Oh, it'll be fun.
Explosive drama.
Will be fun. I might just have to, start staying up. So Zona, Zona, absolutely loves him.
Oh. Yeah, Zona. Probably short for Arizona.
Yeah.
But,
Very cool. Very congratulations. So at least a high point in the show.
Yes.
Yes.
That's probably the author was good.
Uh-huh.
We ended it's shit sandwich, guys. We know it. The author was good. We ended on a good news story.
Yeah.
That middle part. Dill pickles ain't fixing that.
No. Aw. Yeah, Cody bitches about being old and having young kids, but he won't go get on Snapped.
Well, he won't go get snipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's scary. And by the way, my public opinion of Cody Brown and polygamy is he doesn't do it well.
No. Ooh, spicy take. Brenda says it's a wonder one of the sister wives didn't snip him in his sleep.
That would have been Janelle. She has been one that I have seen that I think has a very lovely temper, close to Aeson's.
And potentially bedside scissors.
No, because I don't allow scissors in the bedroom.
I'm not saying you.
I know. I was saying one of the rules of dating Aeson is no, you are not allowed to have scissors in the bedroom.
Why do you think you didn't sleep anywhere but Robin's?
I have my commentary on that one for After Dark.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, to the break room with that commentary. Another shirt, Joe. Dill pickles ain't fixing that. Fair enough. It's a 2-shirt night.
Dill Pickles ain't fixing that. What was the other one?
It was, I don't know how many times you can screw up handling human remains, but I'm gonna bet it's less than the number of times you can mishandle my McDonald's order. We'll make it less wordy.
Okay. I'll work on the dill pickle one. You get the murder one.
Oh, I get the murder quote? Great.
Yes.
Stabby, stabby, stabby. Okay.
Right. All right, guys. We hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been a lot of highs, a lot of lows. It's been long. I am not trying to take on Emily D. Baker's 4-hour stream today. If y'all caught that, that was interesting to say the least. We will be talking about that on Friday.
Yes. Ready for me to take it away?
All the way to Texas, Vanna, because apparently that's the only place you can get buried at.
All right. So, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, and Devin. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become one of our Patreon sponsors and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. And we will be on Thursday with Lady Gwendolyn, hopefully. And with that, guys, we will see you later. Bye, y'all.
Bye.